beautiful day. Hot, 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 beautiful Sunday. This is my...
Hello. I guess I'm going to give it over to you, Jane Ellen, to bring in new people. My name is Rua. I'm part of the coordinating committee of Third Act Faith, and I am doing the opening contemplation. And we have very mellow music, deep, religious. So I'm making a little transition to something that doesn't follow that music in quite the same way. So we're here because of our love of earth and sun, each other. Why don't we just close our eyes for a moment, feel your feet on the floor if there's something under your feet, or the air if you're sitting with your feet up, and just embrace the beauty that surrounds us and all that we have to be grateful for. I found this letter from Thich Nhat Hanh called Father, Son, My Heart. Dear Father, Son, your infinite light is the nourishing source of all species. You are our sun, our source of limited light and life. Your light shines upon Mother Earth, offering us warmth and beauty, helping Mother Earth to nourish us and make life possible for all species. Looking deeply into Mother Earth, I see you in Mother Earth. You aren't only in the sky, but you are also ever present in Mother Earth and in me. Every morning you manifest from the east a glorious rosy orb shining radiantly in the 10 directions. You are the kindest of fathers with a great ability to understand and be compassionate, and yet at the same time you are incredibly bold and courageous. Every second you offer a small portion of yourself to the earth in the form of light energy. You are present in every leaf, every flower, and every living cell. Dear Father, your creative energy, synergy with Mother Earth makes life possible. Mother's slight tilt in her orbit offers us the 4 extraordinary seasons. Her miracle of photosynthesis harnesses your energy and creates oxygen for the atmosphere to protect us from your blazing ultraviolet radiation. Over the eons, Mother has skillfully harvested and stored your sunlight to sustain her children and enhance her beauty. Birds can enjoy soaring through the sky, and deer can enjoy darting through the woods because of your creative harmony with Mother Earth. Each species can delight in its element, thanks to your nourishing light and the miraculous canopy of the atmosphere embracing, protecting, and nurturing us all. Dear Father, you are an integral part of the whole cosmos and our solar system. If you were to disappear, then our life, as well as that of Mother Earth, would also end. I aspire to look deeply to see you, Father, Son, as my heart, and to see the interrelationship, the interbeing nature between Father, Son, Mother Earth, and myself, and all beings. I aspire to practice to love Mother Earth, Father, Son, and for human beings to love one another with the radiant insight of non-duality and interbeing in order to help us transcend all kinds of discrimination, fear, jealousy, resentment, hatred, and despair.
Thank you so much, Rua, and welcome everyone. I'm Jane Ellen Nickel. I'm on the coordinating committee for Third Act Faith and also serve as a communications chair. This meeting and our others in coming months are designed to help equip you for Sunday, thus that lovely poem and the music about Beautiful Sunday. If you've not heard about it, it's on the weekend of September 20th and 21st, when Third Act with a bunch of other organizations are planning demonstrations across the country to focus on renewable and specifically solar energy and the need for a rapid transition. You'll hear later from Martin Wagner about what Third Act Faith is planning, but this evening we wanted to talk about how you can use storytelling to move the climate conversation past statistics and fear and really focus on personal stories, which can be so much more persuasive. We're joined this evening by two members from Third Act Upstate New York. I actually met one of our guests last summer when Third Act partnered with the Chautauqua Institution and Planet Forward at George Washington University. And over 2 days along beautiful Lake Chautauqua in New York, led by Bill McKibben and Frank Sesno from GW, 13 pairs of intergenerational storytellers learned how to share our stories with one another. I will put a link in the chat for that story that we wrote about that if you want to read more. But we're delighted this evening to welcome Joe, who I met during that project, and Steve Danna to join us this evening and talk about what they're working on. Joe Shedd taught educational leadership and educational change for 30 years at Syracuse University in their School for Education. In retirement, he not only joined Third Act Upstate New York, but also Third Act Educators, and he has worked to encourage high school students to organize and conduct voter registration drives in their schools. More recently, then, he's helped to organize an effort to use storytelling and intergenerational dialogue to change how people feel and think about climate change. Joe, his wife, their children and grandchildren all live in Ithaca, New York. We're also joined this evening by Dr. Steve Danna, who were also an educator. Steve worked for 10 years as the Dean of SUNY Plattsburgh at the Queensbury branch campus. And altogether, he's worked 35 years in teaching and administration. But before he went into education, Steve worked with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the U.S. Naval Oceanographic Office as a physical scientist. In addition to Third Act Upstate New York, he's also a climate reality leader. If you're not familiar with climate reality, it's a Al Gore project that's, again, carrying this conversation around the world. And Steve lives with his lovely wife in the Adirondack Mountains, which he refers to as God's country. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe and Steve, and welcome so much. Welcome to our meeting.
Joe, you're muted.
That work now?
Yeah, we got you.
You got it? Okay. And if I could, I'd like to open a slide here.
I'm back on, by the way.
There you go, Steve.
I was
Steve, you've been introduced. Take it away.
Okay.
Yep, your slides are up, Joe.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me and my colleague Steve Danna to lead a discussion of why climate storytelling is so important and how it can be made to work. I'll address the why question, and then Steve will take over for the bulk of our time on focusing on the how. While most Americans now believe that climate change is real, and 2/3 say that they're at least somewhat concerned about it, only 1/3 think that other people are concerned about it. Large numbers still think that climate change is something that will primarily occur in the future and that will primarily affect people elsewhere. Large numbers think that climate change is something that occurs in nature but doesn't affect them personally. And large numbers think that there's little that they or anyone else could do about it, even if they wanted to. the fossil fuel industry has worked hard to promote those misconceptions, all designed to discourage the suggestion that government regulation of fossil fuel emissions and incentives for green alternatives could make a difference. Given those misconceptions and the fact that people don't talk about climate change, even with their friends and family, it's not surprising that that people listed as that few people list it as an issue that they consider highly important. The premise of our work in our integrated projects in upstate New York is that we'll never be able to persuade politicians to give climate change the attention it deserves if most of the public doesn't think it's worth addressing. Our initiative aims to change that political dynamic by challenging the misconceptions that feed the public's apathy and by getting people to talk to each other about the changes happening all around them, about their own experience and what they're doing about it. We aim to convince the public that the ferocity and frequency of severe weather is intensifying all around us. It isn't something that's going to happen simply in the future and elsewhere. It's happening right here and in our own backyards. We aim to convince people that all of us are experiencing the indirect effects of climate change. That it's affecting our food, our health, our housing and housing costs, the availability of housing, the cost of insurance, and increasing deterioration of our transportation and other infrastructure throughout our country. So it isn't just something that's manifest and affecting those who are directly in the path of storms or wildfires, but is affecting all of us. And finally, that climate change can be surmounted if we work together as individuals, as communities, and with government support. The increasing the rapid increase in production of renewable sources of energy, and our success in attacking challenges such as acid rain and holes in the ozone layer are proof positive that it is possible to make important progress, but again, only if people are able to work together and mobilize the support of the government. Our other conviction is that the single most important thing that we can do about challenging climate change is to get people to talk about it, whether they're talking to their neighbors, talking in groups, writing letters to editors, or lobbying with politicians. Simply getting people to talk and share their stories and to listen to each other's stories is central to promoting an understanding of climate change, and to move the political needle to get people to move. The promoting the understanding of climate change and getting people to talk about it really aren't two separate challenges. They're the same challenge. For decades, environmentalists have relied on scientific research and expert testimony and mountains of statistics to try to convince people to accept that something as amorphous and seemingly abstract as climate change is real, that it's happening all around us, and that it can be successfully addressed. we've talked at people and lectured people rather than engaging them in dialogue and getting them to learn from each other's experience. We need to encourage people to tell their own stories and listen to each other's stories about how climate change has affected their lives and what they've done about it. That's the essential why of why we believe climate storytelling is so important. Now I'll turn it over to Steve to focus on, for the rest of our time, on how he and Upstate Third Act members he's recruited have begun to teach us how to make it work. And I'll go offline. Steve?
Steve, you're muted.
Okay. Oh my God, we are having major technical problems here in Warrensburg, New York. So I'm going to go off my phone. We had a great PowerPoint. I've been working with Ann Lowenthal and Kim Knowlton for the last month and a half on our storytelling work. And so we're going to just discuss what that work has been looking like and how it might apply to Sunday. To start, though, per Joe's point, stories are the way we're going to reach people, right? And change the conversation, if you will. With that said, I'd like you to think about a climate event that's happened in your life that is memorable, and maybe there's a little emotion associated with it. And I'd like you to just jot that in the chat, if you would. A memorable climate change event in your life, either that occurred to you or someone you know, and jot that in the chat, please. Mm, yeah, there's a lot of powerful memories. So I think it's safe to say, and please continue entering. I'm working off the phone, so I can't see everything, but it's safe to say that we all can identify with a climate change event, perhaps a catastrophic event, perhaps a slow, steady change in the ambient temperature, maybe the fisheries species that exist within those that live on the coast. And we're all third actors, and so we have a wealth of information and experiences. And so the whole focus on storytelling is to use a template or a tool that can help us organize our thoughts in such a way that when we tell our story, it does these important things. One, it engages the listener. Two, it has an actionable ask and a doable actionable ask. Three, it offers hope. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's really easy to go off the deep end and to perseverate on what's happening. But we know where that takes us, and it isn't good. So we need to be able to leave people with a sense of hope. And equally important with hope is the emotional piece. We need our story to convey the emotions that we're feeling, because emotions are, well, they're extremely engaging, right? So our tool that we developed, well, we've actually adapted from the Citizen Action of New York group, and it's a 4 pillars tool. And what I would normally do is show you the tool on the screen, but I can't right now because my wheel of death is spinning on my computer. So I'm going to describe these pillars, and I will share the materials, if you don't have them, with Joe or someone else on the committee to get to you. And by the way, I might add that on June 2nd at 7 p.m. and June 10th at 10 a.m., we will be doing training sessions, train the trainer on storytelling, where we will share all the resources and work with people as they build the start of their stories. But back to the tool. 4 pillars. These are the key essential elements of a story. The first is identifying who you are and what your values are. So I'm going to just tell you a story that I've written, which is a work in progress, and I'm going to address each of the 4 pillars in my story. Again, the first pillar is, who are you and what are your values? So for me, I'm Steve Danna. I'm a former oceanographer and a retired educator. I spent most of my year teaching. And very early in my life, I understood through my college work and my work with the government how climate change was really changing the environment in which we live. When I became a teacher, I engaged the students best when I told them stories. And that's kind of what I've done my entire life, telling stories, trying to engage people to think about climate change. That's the first pillar, telling the listener who you are, what you value. The second pillar is the conflict with those values. Back to my story. I'm very concerned about what's happening, as we all are, with the monies that were budgeted for renewable energy incentives and other climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. The present administration will likely remove most, if not all, of those monies. And that is very troubling because it goes against my values. So the second pillar is to describe the conflict, the barriers, the problem that is colliding with your values and who you are, which you address in the first pillar. Again, here's the story. You tell the person who you are. Here are my values. The second one, here's the conflict for me. Then you tell your story. 12 years ago, we decided to put a geothermal system in our home and solar panels on our garage roof. That was a lot of money. And I'm an educator, so we had to take a loan out, but we also got money through the federal tax credits for renewable energy projects, and also state money. And it was those monies that allowed us to do those 2 significant projects in our home. Now, I live in a pretty red area of New York. I live in the Adirondacks, and Elaine Stefanik is a very popular person here. And I just want to emphasize that this was apolitical, the renewable energy incentives. A lot of my neighbors who were strong right-wing Republicans, they put solar panels on their homes. They invested in renewable energies. Why? Because it was a smart thing to do. They did it because it saved them money. And they were proud of it. So again, pillar 1, what are your values? Who you are. Pillar 2, what is the problem or the conflict? Pillar 3 is your story. And I've told you basically those 3 elements of the 4-pillar model. And the last pillar is the ask and the hope. So what I'm asking is that we all reach out to our local, state, and national representatives, and we ask them to fight what's going down in Congress. We ask them to address the problems. But we also work at the local level because there are still opportunities at the local level. And it's going to be through the conversations that we have that we can realize those communications. And it may not change immediately, but it's the conversations that will ultimately drive that change. All right, so I've been doing a lot of talking, I'm sorry. But again, 4 pillars. 1, who are you and what are your values? 2, what is the conflict to those values? 3, what's your story that connects the problem of the conflict with your values? And the last step is, what is your ask and how can you instill hope through that ask? So what I'm going to ask you to do now is take a few minutes, and you can choose to use the piece you wrote in the chat about the climate change event that you shared with others, or it could be something different. But I want you to take 3-4 minutes and just quickly jot down some general comments for each of those pillars. And again, apologies for not sharing screen. I don't have a screen to share. But again, what are they? 1, what are your values? Who are you? 2, what's the problem? Conflict. 3, what's your story? And 4, what's your ask? Where's the hope? All right, so take 3-4 minutes. We're gonna do this fairly quickly. I'm timing, and in 3 minutes, I'm gonna give you 1 minute. Oh, thank you, Ann. Ann's putting stuff in the chat. Beautiful. All right, Ann. Okay, so we have 4 minutes. Go ahead, folks. All right, we have 1 more minute. Okay, so we will move on from this point, and I just want to real quickly share with you a few thoughts we had about Sunday with Joe and the rest of the team. One of the things we thought of was to have pre-selected 3 or 4 storytellers. We vetted the stories, and we'd have an intergenerational audience at the Sunday activity. But the storytellers, and it would be taped. We'd videotape it with music, perhaps create a nice production. But what we would do is we would have the storyteller tell their story, and then we'd ask the audience to break out into small groups and strategize what are the asks that we could make from this story. What can we do about it? And in doing this kind of activity, one, they hear a story, they hear the problem, and then they get to brainstorm, again, this is intergenerational, ideas to address the problem. And then we do some sharing out, and we would do that 3 or 4 times, time permitting, and that would get everyone involved. It would lead to powerful stories, and I think most importantly, it would lead to collaborative thinking on what do we do about the problem, ultimately garnering a sense of hope and action from that type of a Sunday activity. We have a few other ideas, but that's the one that struck me the most. And with that said, again, apologies for the tech issues. So I'm going to pass this back to Joe.
Joe, you're muted.
My apologies. That's our presentation. As we indicated, that Steve's effort and the effort of the folks that are working with his storytelling group are integral to our parallel effort, really, of looking for ways of changing the ways the general public thinks and reacts to climate change. We're convinced that the politics of climate change won't change if the general public continues to believe that either it's not worth addressing or it's not possible to successfully address it. And if politicians are convinced that's where the general public stands, we really have very little prospect of getting politicians to move the needle. Even though the politics of climate change isn't explicitly the focus of our efforts, it's really an underlying motivation for action. But we're convinced that it's individual people's stories and people listening to each other's stories that are going to make a difference. Jane Ellen, that's it.
Thank you so much, Joe and Steve. And Steve, if you want to send us your slides and everything, we can send those out with folks after the meeting, just so that they have that.
Okay.
We are going to
Yep.
pass it off now to Martin, who's going to talk a little bit more about Sunday and what we are
Yeah.
planning to help equip you for that in addition.
Thanks, Jane Ellen, and thank you so much, Joe and Steve. In making the are you not hearing me?
You're fine, Martin. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So in making the transition from this great presentation about telling stories to our role as Third Act Faith, I want to tell a little story of my own about the value of storytelling. 20 years ago, I was representing the Inuit people of the Arctic, and in that work, I was the first person to draw the connection between climate change and human rights, to put climate change into the human rights context. And the reason that we did that was largely because at that time, climate change was discussed mostly as a technical issue. and not really so much as a human issue. And so by putting climate change into the context of human rights, we were able to make it a human issue, to show how it affected human beings. And just doing that changed the global conversation about climate change. People began talking about climate change as a human issue, but also importantly, it put it into a moral framework so people could talk about climate change as a moral issue. So one of the things we're doing in telling stories, I think, is to put a human face and even more importantly, a human heart to our story about climate change and to draw people in that way. And in our faith work, in our role as people of faith and people of spirit, we can do a similar thing because a lot of people, even people who don't identify as religious, respect the spiritual and moral foundation that is represented by people of faith and spirit. And so if we can talk about why does our faith or our spirituality make us care about climate change, I think we can speak to a lot of people that others may not be able to speak to. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this meeting about how do we talk as people of faith, people of spirit, about climate change. But we wanted to share a little bit about some of the other things that Third Act Faith is going to be doing and is already doing in preparation for Sunday. We are very soon going to be releasing a really great document that unfortunately Jim Antal isn't here to receive the praise for his having drafted this document that describes Sunday and describes the role of faith institutions in promoting Sunday. But we're going to have that for you all to share with your communities and your congregations, etc. And that will be available very soon. And we are also beginning to put together a number of resources for people of faith and congregations and other spiritual communities to use to promote Sunday. And I'm going to put a link in the chat to this website that is a list of links to different kinds of resources. And they include general resources about Sunday and what it is and about solar power, etc. But then particularly resources for faith groups like materials for services, meditation materials that come from different faith traditions, a live list that we hope people will contribute to of symbols and metaphors and images of the light and sun that can be used in religious and spiritual contexts. So these are resources and ideas that were developed largely out of our last meeting last month. And it was really great to have everybody's input into that. And we would really love further input in developing these resources. So look at that list. If you see something that is major that is missing or something you would like to add, please contact us at faith@thirdact.org. But even more, if there's a particular sub part of that you want to take a lead in helping to flesh out, let us know because there's room for all kinds of collaboration on this. And I think we may have time for questions later, and we're running a little behind time, so I will pass it along to Ace.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. On the screen is my full name, Adrian, but most of the world knows me as Ace, a nickname. And now I have the opportunity to think with you about writing your own story. You started the juices rolling as Stephen suggested a few things that I see people put into the chat. But now for about 5 minutes, each of you could think about a story in your own lives, take a piece of paper or your computer, however you want to do this, and just think a little bit, maybe write a paragraph just to get started to warm yourself up, or a few bullet points, doesn't matter. But something that when we're done working and writing, we can share with one another. And in that story, we have a couple of prompts for you. You go any way you want. Capture your concerns about the climate crisis. Did your faith or your spirituality have something to do with your awareness of it, as we're beginning to hear from some of you? And in what way? And what actions, including a switch to clean energy, have you considered thus far? Those questions can fit nicely with the pillar structure that Stephen has just helped us to think about. So who you are, what your values are, what's in conflict with those values, what's your story, and that part we'd love you to start thinking about. And then, of course, what's the ask and where's the hope? So we're going to put on a little bit of creative music for you right now, Kathleen, and let us start writing. All right, that's my signal to, oh. think that's my signal now. And I want to thank Kathleen very much for sharing the music, unless it was Jane Ellen. One of you wonderful people have given us such beautiful music this evening. And what we'd like to do right now is a lot of you have just been listening and taking in what you're hearing. And we want to hear some of your voices now. What story popped into your head? And what was it like to start thinking about writing it down? Who would you share it with? So let's just do a round. And if somebody speaks, just, I guess, raise your hand if you want to be the next person after. So who would like to start us? We'll do this for a little bit, and then we're going to brainstorm a little bit more, I think, with Martin about how we can bring those stories back to the communities that we all are from. So who would like to start for us? Just any story that popped in your head that you think is significant. Okay, Mary. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, so this is what I wrote. I grew up in Minnesota on a lake in the woods with the closeness to nature and the profound peace that made a chaotic family situation manageable. It was a psychological, a physical, and a spiritual lifeline. Today, we're hearing about the national parks losing staff, the places where any visitor can experience that beauty, that peace, that awe. My hope is that so many have loved time in those parks that there will be an outpouring of calls, postcards, letters, and the like to our elected representatives that will be as effective as Mr. Rogers was years ago in his testifying about public television to the Congress. Everyone needs that outdoor place away from home. Everybody who needs that outdoor place away from home should be able to enjoy the bounty of our parks. Let's each do our part, honoring what we know to be critical to the human spirit.
Thank you, Mary. Other comments, somebody else share, and then maybe a few bits of feedback if we have a moment. We're watching the clock as well. Anne. Unmute, yeah. That tricky unmute button.
Well, I had too many questions because I'm a direction follower. And my thought was thinking about hot summers in St. Louis and the fact that we always knew that some people didn't have air conditioners, and knowing kind of that it got worse as time passed, but then I moved out of St. Louis. But I wondered how we know it, how the people would know it's climate change. Like there was a big tornado in St. Louis, but I don't know. I think the prior knowledge that people might have to have before they tell a legitimate story, they'd have to know, which could be provided. And you could say that give them information that the average temperature in St. Louis has risen a certain amount, and we don't know, how do we know it's climate change? And give a little information before the story comes. We were middle class, and I remember that we had one air conditioner in my parents' room, and all of the camp counselors, when I was a camp counselor, had our meeting in that bedroom on the floor. And that the heat of it is, at that time, probably, I don't know if it was climate change, but it might well have been that it was getting hotter, or it might not have. But anyway, I'd like to follow your directions, but I found that I more was thinking, if I were to do this, how could we make it work better so that people would, I don't know that that's a climate change. It's not a climate change story as it is, because we don't know if it was climate change. I'm also, just today, I thought, do I want to go to Cape Cod where we used to go to cool off? And is it cool enough in the east, or has it gotten too hot? But that doesn't follow your directions. So if we're,
It's a good start, Anne. I think it's a good start. You should compliment yourself. You're moving along
no,
very
what I'm saying
nicely.
is that other people will be like me and say, I don't know that this is a climate change story, so
Right.
I'm not going to tell a story. in
Well, I think that we have Joe and Steven still on, so maybe one of you want to take that. I have my own reaction, but one of you might want to respond to what Ann is saying. I will say, as Joe figures out how to unmute his button again, that for both Mary and Ann, as I listened, and I'd love to hear other people's responses too, when each of you said something about something personal, like Mary, you started with when I was a child and Anne, you said, I remember being in the AC and my parents, that made me think, oh, I got more interested in the story right then because it was about you, right? And I'm relating to you. So Joe,
And
what
mine,
do
and
you
if it's
say?
any comfort, was obviously I wasn't connecting it to climate change. I was collecting it to the felon and what he's doing. Sorry.
No. Okay, Joe.
I, first, and thank you for that observation. I think it's a really profound one, and I think all along we've had to struggle with the fact that the concept of climate change is abstract. It isn't self-evident that any particular hurricane or wildfire or drought is a product of climate change. I think part of what we've been working with is the argument that it isn't any particular weather event that we can attribute to climate change. It's the increasing ferocity and increasing frequency of severe weather that is clearly attributable to climate change. And the fact that there's a lot of indirect effects of climate change that most of us discount and don't attribute to climate change at all. Our food supply and the quality and availability of different kinds of food, our public health, the availability of housing and insurance, and all of it is has cumulative effects. But Anne, I think you're absolutely right that one of the problems with and one of the stories that we have to share with each other is our uncertainty about about what's climate change and why it's so important for people to be sharing their stories.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I know Kathleen has a story perhaps to share. I'm going to let Stephen add something to that, and then Kathleen, and then I'm going to turn it to Martin. Okay?
Perfect.
So go for it, Stephen.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I would say 99% of all physical scientists agree that climate change is real. There's no question about it. And your point is well taken. The variability of weather day to day, week to week is pretty extreme, especially now with climate change. But if you look at the climatic data, the longer term data, the elevated temperatures, sea temperatures, atmospheric temperatures, the dwindling ice caps, there's so much data out there. But at the end of the day, I rest my beliefs and my convictions on the 99% of physical scientists who unequivocally say we are warming the planet up and we need to do something about it. That's what I wanted to add.
I think, let me just jump in. I think a wonderful idea for us as we prepare for Sunday to take Anne's critique or question is to really, it's the data is all there, as Stephen's saying, right? So some of it is finding like a cheat sheet almost that people can refer to as they're talking about it, right? Look, we have this, we have that. This has never happened before. I mean, the information is there. It's about putting it together in a way that we can, like an elevator talk or something. What did you write
Yeah.
your dissertation on? So I think that's a great thing that maybe our group could also start thinking about, Jane Ellen and Kathleen, et cetera. And now I'm going to let Kathleen speak.
So first, my apologies that you can't see me. I have a brand new computer and it won't let me show myself. So anyway, I wanted to riff off of Stephen or Joe's, I couldn't remember which said it, about food. I sell local food here on the Oregon coast, and one of my partner farms was flooded this spring. Now they're in a river river bottom section. So they are used to some flooding, but this flooding destroyed everything. They lost all the crops that they had just planted in March. They had to start from scratch, and it was unprecedented. So when I share that story with people, I don't necessarily have to say climate change, but I will say unprecedented storms is what caused this. And then, we can take the conversation from there. And it has started to affect more than just this one farm. I'm starting to hear all kinds of questions about whether they can continue farming. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Kathleen. So where we're going to head now with this, I know I'd love to hear more and more of your stories, but I'm going to send it back to Martin to help us think about ways to use storytelling. If it's appealing to you all as a tool that maybe you underestimate the power of all of that. So Martin.
Thanks, Ace. And I really love the stories that are beginning to come out here. I just want to maybe for a moment maybe reassure people that there are always going to be these questions about, do I have enough science? Do I have the statistics, etc.? And I think you can, I mean, if you have them, great. But I think the powerful thing about storytelling is bringing your heart and your emotional story, your human connection to it. And so don't resist telling your story just because you don't have all the technical information that is out there. That's not your job. There are scientists out there to help tell those stories. So we wanted to talk a little bit, and we're going to break out into breakout rooms to do this, about what we do with these stories. How do we take our stories back home? Whom do we tell them to? Are there events or contexts in which we might think about telling them? So we'll spend about 10 minutes in those groups, and hopefully, well, now some people have left. So hopefully I'm going to invite you all to a room, and please join it. And I may do a little bit of rearranging here, but we'll talk for about 10 minutes about what to do with our stories, and then we'll come back and share a little bit about what we learned. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had interesting conversations, and I wanted to open the floor up for some of what you heard that you feel excited about or think would be useful sharing with the rest of the group. Kathleen, go ahead.
Yep. So something that one of our people said, Jeremy Kagan, he's a filmmaker out in LA, and he shared with us this fabulous little bit. Facts inform, stories transform. And we were talking about how our personal stories and how we could share and how we could make it apply to climate change. And he shared that with us, and that's just was really helpful. So I took notes, so you'll get notes.
That's great. What else did you hear? Anne, are you raising your hand? You're on mute.
I guess that I was the only one who felt like I had to follow the directions, and the directions made me very uncomfortable, because I had a story to tell and I started telling it, but I knew that it wasn't this. I was not following directions, those 4 things that you have to do, and I began to wonder, if I'm supposed to follow directions, how do I know that this experience that I had was part of climate change? So my thought was that maybe the directions could be a little different in order to get people to tell the stories. Because if you remember 1, 2, 3, 4, I didn't have the knowledge to know that it was something more than just an experience that I had when I was a child and one as an adult, and how it was really an example of climate change.
Joe said to us earlier that two-thirds of the people in the country care about climate change, but they also think that 2/3 of the country doesn't share their caring about it. Or was that the right statistic,
Yep.
Joe? Yeah. So I think one response, Anne, is the most important thing is that we begin talking about climate change to those people around us. And I wonder, Joe and Steve, if you have thoughts about being free to vary the 4 pillars and the instructions, but that was my first thought.
Can I share my screen real quickly? Just
Yeah.
because I couldn't do this earlier. I think this might clear a few things up. 2 minutes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Let me I just gotta get the right window open. Hold on here. Okay, so this is the tool that I was verbally describing, but it's really quite simple when we look at it. These are the 4 pillars. Who are you? What do you believe? Why you? What is driving you to do this? And then the second pillar was the conflict. What's the problem? Well, it's ExxonMobil, it's the fossil fuel industry, it's Congress. What are the barriers to your values that are occurring through this conflict? The third pillar is what's your story? This is where you tell your story. Maybe it was something that happened 50 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 months ago, and how does it connect to the conflict? And the last is what's the solution? What is the call to action? And how can we make that happen? So it's hard to pick all that up with verbally only, but that's the tool. It's a really user-friendly tool. And if you are available, I encourage you to join us for the next Train the Trainer workshop, which is on June 2nd at 7, or join us on June 10th at 10 a.m. It'll be 2 Train the Trainer workshops, and all the resources and time to practice will be
Great.
at that
Thanks
point.
so much, Steve. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more shares. Any other interesting ideas for how we share our stories that came out of your conversations? Rua?
Kathy and I both felt that it was really important to share from personal experience in the story and find a way to really connect with whoever you are sharing a story so that you're going to hear their story too. I think it takes listening.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated that sense of the story, and we did talk about, the facts aren't necessary because you can speak from your own personal experiences, and sometimes that means more.
Great, thanks, Rua. We have time for 1 more quick one.
I'd love to hear from someone who hasn't spoken yet, just how you reacted to listening to the stories in your group, or when Stephen was sharing one, or in my group, Dorinda. I'm calling out Dorinda. Gave us a beautiful story of what it was like to grow up as a child in rural America and how nature was just so much a part of her life. So I was touched. What about the rest of you? Who haven't yet necessarily spoken. I'm just curious how you react, because that's also data for you guys, Stephen and Joe. Anyone want to throw in something? Please, I'd love to hear it. I'm a school teacher. I could call on someone, but that's mean, so I won't do that. But
All right, well, we are at time for this part of the meeting, so you're all saved by the bell, the school bell, and I think I'm passing it back. I'm not sure who I'm passing it back to, so I'm just going to shut up and let the right person pick it up.
Kathleen.
Yeah, I can, the disembodied voice of Kathleen up there in the corner. So we want to thank you all for coming. I've put a few links in the chat, as have others. Try to, Yeah, try to catch those. I believe that this is saved since we're recording the message. So we'll be able to send these links out to you. I understand we're also going to be sending out Stephen's PowerPoint. Thank you, Stephen. And if any of your groups took notes during your breakout, please send them to faith@thirdact.org, and we will compile those and add them. I'm trying to talk and type at the same time. Add them to our resources page and send that out to you too. There's our email, faith@thirdact.org. Otherwise, we have one last song, and I want to preface this last one. I changed it up on everyone at the last minute. I was supposed to be sharing music, but my computer won't let me do anything. So Jane Ellen is graciously doing my job for me. And this is a song by Pat Scanlon called You Are Our Sunshine. I am hoping to make it the theme song for Third Act's Sunday. It's about 6 minutes long. We've left plenty of time for you to hang out and listen and watch. These are all church people that he videotaped up in, I think he's in Vermont. And so it's a kick in the pants, and it's fabulous lyrics. And all right, we're good to go. I think Jane Ellen's got it up, so go for it, Jane Ellen.
You are our sunshine, our only sunshine. Greenhouse gases must go away. We hear your warning about global warming. Tomorrow will be a brighter day.
We can no longer just stand by as glaciers melt and species die and disappear. Millions in tears. It is time to clean up our skies. Together, put on the brakes. Turn around before it is too late. No more than 2 Celsius degrees. We can do this if we all believe.
You are our sunshine, our only sunshine. Greenhouse gases must go away. We hear your warning about global warming. Tomorrow will be a brighter day.
Fire, floods, droughts, hurricanes, energy policies that are insane. We must save our earth in time, not protect the corporate bottom line. All that methane and CO2 can be controlled. It's up to me and you. Raise our voices, we're not alone. This blue sphere is our only home.
You are our sunshine, our only sunshine. Greenhouse gases must go away. We hear your warning about global warming. Tomorrow will be a brighter day.
A cleaner world within our grasp. Make hydrocarbons a thing of the past. Solar, wind, and hydro too is our future. It's up to me and you. An agreement over in France gives us hope, the world a chance. But we all must get on board, fully implement the Paris Accords.
You are our sunshine, our only sunshine. Greenhouse gases must go away. We hear your warning about global warming. Tomorrow will be a brighter day.
Will our children say if we do nothing but turn away? For them and us, the future calls. Save our planet for both one and all. Youth of the world, understand. We hold their future in our hands. Now is the time, now is the hour, for together we all have the power. So stand up, take control. It's our world, only one we know. Stand together, hand in hand. We can do this, oh yes we can.
You are our sunshine, our only sunshine. Greenhouse gases must go away. We hear your warning, our global warning. Tomorrow will be a brighter day.
Yes, tomorrow
will be a brighter day.
tomorrow will be a brighter day.
So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did when I first heard it. Thanks all for coming, and we will see you next time. Yep, until then, you are our sunshine. Bye all.